Greetings, fellow dungeon delvers, and welcome to Dorans and Dragons. My name is Justin, and today I'm going to be breaking down for you the new 1D&D editionless edition of D&D playtest materials. Today we just got a bombshell dropped on us in terms of new content and what we should be expecting for the future. So rather than go through all of this, I wanted to crack it up into a few separate sections. There's so much to discuss here. This is going to be Unearthed Arcana that is potentially going to be replacing the character creation portion of the player's handbook. We haven't gotten our classes yet, but we did get our races and backgrounds, as well as feats. So there's a lot to break down here. I think each of those warrant their own video. So I'm just going to go through the rules glossary and things that are changing from the original edition of the player's handbook, which they're referring to as the 2014 player's handbook. So the first thing we're going to go through is, and these are all in alphabetical order, so they may seem a little out of place, but don't worry, as we go through them, you'll kind of understand. We are removing the schools of magic in the sense that they are not going to be the main categories by which we define our spells. Right now, it looks like we're going to a system of arcane, primal, and divine. And as you can see here, the arcane spells draw on the ambient magic of the multiverse. Bards, sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards harness this magic, as do artificers. We have a spell list that we can take a look at later. Probably not going to go through that right now, but that is where we're headed. Now, what this doesn't mention is that subclasses, I'm sure, will be able to pull from the other spell lists as well. I assume bards and their magical secrets will be able to get spells off of the other spell lists as well. I'm kind of curious how they're going to restrict certain classes to certain spells. I wonder if classes are going to have their own spell list again. I assume so, but we'll see. I mean, with all the choice in the rest of this document that they're giving, I would not be surprised if we end up in a world where everyone has the same spell list and just how they access it is different. It seems like choice is on the menu here. So that's good, and I'm looking forward to it. As a guy who loves sorcerers, their spell list has been atrocious forever. I'm looking forward to seeing wizards maybe knock down a peg or two. We'll see. Next, we have our artisans tools. These are just a new category of tool for which you can gain proficiency. The list is still in the 2014 player's handbook, but the tool costs are now 15 gold a piece. I have to imagine that's an increase in price. I'm not sure. I've never really worried about tool prices. Now we have our creature types. In D&D, every player character and monster has a tag that identifies the type of creature they are. Most of the player characters are humanoid. That's still consistent as we go back up to the top and go through the new races they've created. But here's just the table of creatures that are available. They mentioned down here that the types themselves don't have rules, but they matter in the sense that they impact how other features affect them. The example they give is that the Cure Wounds spell doesn't benefit a construct. Now, here we get to what I think will be one of the most controversial things of the new rules changes, which is the D20 test. This is the way I'm reading this. This seems to be replacing DCs. The term D20 test encompasses the three main D20s of the game: ability checks, attack rolls, and saving throws. If something in the game affects D20 tests, it affects all three of these rules. This is a very important text, and I think something that a lot of DMs now need to been told is that you determine whether a D20 test is warranted in any given circumstance. To be warranted, D20 test has to have a target higher than 5 and no greater than 30. Meaning if it's greater than 30, don't ask them to roll. You're just being a jerk. And now the next part's where I think it's going to get really controversial. So if you roll on a 1, you fail the test, regardless of any modifiers to the roll. So all the memes about, nat 1 ability checks not having any sort of consequence are out the window. They are now automatic fails regardless. That's crazy. I think the result of this is that a lot less things are going to be given checks. A level 20 rogue trying to pick a simple lock shouldn't have to roll a dice. They're probably going to succeed on that every time. We'll see what comes out of this. I'm curious how the community feels about this. I love this. And I mean, this is how I play my games anyway, so not a change for me. And on the reverse side of the coin, rolling a 20. If you roll a 20 on the D20, the D20 test automatically succeeds, regardless of any modifiers to the roll. Here's the cool part, and what we'll mention in the racial feats is that inspiration is gained when you roll a nat 20, thanks to the remarkable success. Inspiration, and that'll come up, that there's a big change to the way inspiration works. We'll get to that in a second, but you're going to get inspiration just by rolling a nat 20. That's awesome. I think inspiration is a system that needed a facelift, and we'll get to that in a minute, but rolling a nat 20 and getting inspiration from it is awesome. I think that was a great change. And this just mentions, rolling a 20 doesn't bypass limitations on the test, blah, 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 blah. Things that your DM would probably already restrict you to anyway, so that's nothing new. Critical hits. Weapons and unarmed strikes have a special feature for player characters. Now, stopping right there, it seems like only players can get crits. That's definitely a spicy take. I don't know how I feel about that. My initial sentiment is that it robs a lot of creatures of a lot of their threat. I think that the TPK potential goes down significantly. I see it both ways. I think the hardcore war gamers are going to be upset about this. Your casual party of people who are just, looking for a fun way to blow off steam and tell a fun story are probably not going to care too much about this. I'm definitely on the fence. I think that monster crits definitely add an element of danger that can really amp up the tension in a combat encounter, but I'm okay either way. It's still exactly the same as the way it works now. You basically just get an extra damage dice. I was a little disappointed with this. I don't like the way our current system works. Most of the DMs I know actually homebrew this anyway to do something different. I just do double damage, so you take whatever damage you're going to end up doing. If you want to add smites, if you want to add sneak attack, whatever, take that final number and just double it. It turns my players into these unstoppable wrecking balls, but I just don't care. I can buff up the monster's hit point pool if I need to. This system has always felt underwhelming to me, right? Because you can roll 2 1s on your D6s, and one of your normal attacks could have done more damage than that. So I've always felt that was kind of weak. Bare minimum they could have done here is maybe added the second roll of extra damage as a max roll. In this example, right, you have your 2d6. Instead of 2d6 plus your strength mod, it would just be 1d6 plus your strength mod plus 6. That's just me. I think this was kind of underwhelming, but DMs will continue to do what they were doing anyway. That's probably not going to change. Next, we have our divine spells. This is going to be for our clerics and paladins. And like I said, I'm sure there are other subclasses that are going to be dipping their hands into here, like celestial warlocks and your divine soul sorcerers, that kind of thing. The divine soul already gets the cleric spell list as it is, so I'd be surprised if that changed. Gaming tools are going to be just like the proficiency tools. They're knocked down to 1 gold piece. Again, this one, although 1 gold piece, maybe this is a price increase or a price reduction. I don't know. Not really worried about it, to be honest. Never really come up. Grappled has changed. While you're grappled, you experience the following effects. Speed 0. Your speed 0 and can't change. Love that. And to be clear, this is while you are grappled. So your attacks have disadvantage on attack rolls against any target other than the grappler. Love that. That's like taunt mechanics that they've tried to add in the game all through the grapple condition. I love that. Movable. The grappler can drag or carry you, but the grappler suffers from the slow condition while moving unless you are tiny or 2 or more sizes smaller than the grappler. I don't know how often that's going to come up. If you take the small size option for your race, maybe it'll come up a little more, but the slowed condition is a new thing that we'll get into here soon, which is very cool. Incapacitated got an update as well. So while you're incapped, you experience the following conditions. You can't take actions or reactions. Concentration is broken. You can't talk. If you're incapped when you roll initiative, you have a disadvantage on the roll. That one, I don't know how often that's going to come up. I guess in a scenario where you've stumbled into a dangerous situation and there's some sort of area of effect that makes you sleepy or something, or knocks you unconscious, that kind of thing. I don't know how often that's going to come up, but still a cool idea. Now we get into inspiration. And again, like I said before, this is something I think is very cool. I think this is giving it the facelift that it needed to make it actually a part of your games. So whenever you have inspiration, you can expend it to give yourself advantage on a D20 test, which is the new catch-all term for anytime you roll a D20. You do have to decide before you roll the dice. That part I don't like. It'd be better if you could do it in reaction to you failing a check. Maybe I would let a character spend their reaction to use their inspiration. That way there's some sort of cost associated with it, but that's just a thought. So how do you gain inspiration? The main way is through the rolling a nat 20, which we talked about before. The DM still has the option though to give inspiration to a character when they do something really good in roleplay. Similarly to Bardic Inspiration though, you can only have 1 instance of inspiration at a time. I do love that if you roll like 2 nat 20s back to back, or within short succession of each other, it doesn't go to waste. You can still give it to another player in your party. Here's another catch here: losing inspiration. If you have inspiration when you start a long rest, you lose that inspiration. I do like that. I wouldn't want this to be like a massive pool that you could pull from at any time. And by that I mean party having a massive pool. Like let's say you are trying to save your inspiration for the next day when you know you're going to fight a boss. I don't think that's a good idea. I think that once you start a long rest, you lose the kind of surge of energy that inspiration represents. Then we have a minor change to long rest, requiring at least 6 hours of sleep. And then you also have the 2 hours of light activity like reading, talking, eating, or standing watch. I like this. The reading part is the most important part to me. I'm hoping that reading is going to be one of the ways that you can cultivate feats, which are going to get really strong in this, new editionless edition. So I'm hoping this is one way through which you can gain one of those, is spending certain your long rest in certain ways. Benefits of the long rest is pretty similar. You get all your hit points back, and then you also regain your spent hit die, up to half of them. The important piece here is the creature can't benefit from more than one long rest in a 24-hour period. The creature must have at least one hit point at the start to the rest to gain its benefits. I don't know where that wouldn't be the case. I think people at 0 hit points, maybe if they're stable, where they're not throwing death saves, but they're still at 0, I guess is who this is targeted at, but I don't feel like that occurs very often. I feel like you at least get your party member back up a decent amount of health before you throw them into a rest. We also get rules on interrupting the rest. So if you're interrupted by combat, or if you go walk around, do any sort of activity, the rest doesn't work and you have to restart it. But if you had at least an hour of it, you do get the benefits of a short rest. This is something that I think most people did automatically. I'm glad they codified it, of course, but I think this is something that is just reflective of the way people played anyways. Musical instrument, just another, the gaming tools before and the artisan's tools, not important here. Again, don't remember the gold costs offhand, but this does sound like a nerf, or it sounds like a cost increase. Primal spells are going to be the Druid and Ranger spell list. Nothing special there. We've already talked about that. Now we have the slowed condition. For the people who are still here that watch my D&D builds, this is going to be really nice for us because I'm hoping that we get more and more effects that apply this condition, because there's so many slows in League of Legends and there are so few slows in D&D that it is just such a pain in the ass to get these. So I hope this actually comes up more. I hope this is something we can get more of. But anyway, so you have limited movement. So you have to spend 1 extra feet of movement for every foot you move using your speed. That's just doubling the distance. That's nice. Attack rolls against you have advantage. You have disadvantage on dexterity saves. That makes sense. Now remember, apply this to the grappled condition. Your grappler has this slowed condition. So if someone is grappling you, attacks against them have advantage. So if someone is grappling you and your teammates need to go break that grapple, much more ease in doing so. And for all you barbarians out there who like to get up and grapple, or fighters, this is going to hit you too. You're going to have the slowed condition on you, and people, when they come to whack you, you're not going to be able to defend yourself as well. So they're going to have advantage. Tool proficiency is going to give you proficiency with a tool, meaning you can add your proficiency bonus to any ability check you make with the tool. However, if you have proficiency with the skill that's also associated with that check, for example, rogues who have efficiency with sleight of hand and have proficiency with their thieves tools, they'll get advantage on the checks they make. So for example, if you're trying to disarm a trap, when you have those two proficiencies, you'll actually get advantage on that check, getting it even more likely that you succeed. I think this is a nice little buff. Tremor Sense is mentioned here as well. This is important because I think a lot of people play Tremor Sense as if it's blind sight or gives you this super sense. Tremor Sense can't detect creatures or objects in the air, and Tremor Sense doesn't count as a form of sight. It's not a god sense. If someone's walking on the same floor you are, or bumps into a wall you're touching, that kind of thing. Unarmed Strike also got a little bit of a facelift, whereas that we have the bones of the Unarmed Strike that we have now, but they grabbed the grapple and shove features that were associated with the attack action and brought them in line with this as well. Now with your Unarmed Strike, you have 3 choices when you actually hit it. You can do the 1 plus your strength mod and damage, just like you do now. You can use this to grapple, and you can use this to shove. All right, that's all I really wanted to go over with you guys today. We can scroll through here real quick. I'm going to show you a quick list of the Arcane, Divine, and Primal spell lists. We're going to scroll through here and show you kind of what we're getting. I'm going to zoom this out so you can see a little better. We don't know how they're actually dividing these up among those classes, but we'll see. Here you go. You can pause the video and take a look at this, or I'll have links to this document in the description down below. If you guys have any questions, any thoughts, please let me know in the comments section down below. I'm very curious. And then I also have the overarching question that I need from my audience, which is, where do we go from here? I think it's too early to tell right now, but are we starting over? Are we starting over from the beginning? What are we doing here? I'd really like, some input and some what you guys think about what we should do going forward. I'm really curious. I'll be asking the Patreon folks what they think. If you want to support the channel, you can also join us over on Patreon. You can join us on Discord as well, which is now a free public link for anyone to join. We have lots of discussion about this stuff. Thanks for joining. This is a little bit more of a free form. I really appreciate you all for watching, and hopefully we'll catch you on the Rift or in the Forgotten Realms.